Welcome back, episode 2, Priority Traffic. I am Deputy Hookham. Welcome back. Thank you guys again for joining us. I have with me, as always, my trusty co-hosts, Deputy Bookham.
What up?
Deputy Misdemeanor.
Hello.
So, guys, this is our second episode. The first one did great. For those of you guys listening, thank you very much for supporting us. We actually charted, guys, on the U.S. podcast charts, the Canadian podcast charts, and the Denmarkian podcast charts.
Say what?
Yeah. Yep. U.S., Canada, and Denmark. We entered into the charts at number 37.
Wow.
On the U.S. charts and the category that we're in. So that's incredible.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yes. It's all because of you. So, again, guys, we're going to have a great episode for you. We're going to be talking about some of the things that obviously is weighing heavily on everybody's minds. Some of the feedback I got was people were very appreciative that we were able to talk about things that they couldn't talk about, that they know is affecting them day to day. And I think the number one thing right now that law enforcement officers are dealing with is defunding the police. The whole movement.
Defunded.
Yes. So what is defunding the police? Because we've heard this term for months, right? And it means something different to everybody from things that I've experienced. Some people think that defunding the police means trimming their budget and then taking that money and reallocating it to something better, like social services, homeless resources, violence prevention. Some people take defunding the police to mean disbanding the police department and completely getting rid of it. What do you guys think? What is your definition of defunding the police?
I think it has a range of... It's hard because across the country you see some places that are trying to really just abolish their police departments, mm-hmm. and other places are getting more funding or allocating money to different kinds of enforcement like mental health.
Right.
So it really depends on what area you're in and what your city wants. I know for us, we haven't really seen any defunding here. We actually are getting more money, but I am seeing that we are reallocating money to different units.
Or coming up with new units to address problems that the community might want handled. And I don't think that defunding is a nationwide thing in the sense of a ton of agencies are being defunded. I think that there are some major cities that are going through this that's making it newsworthy, but I don't think it's the overall rule of thumb, per se. But regardless of how often or where it's happening, we can't deny the fact that defunding law enforcement has had severe adverse effects to the cities themselves. You guys agree?
I agree.
Yep.
What kind of things do you? What kind of things have you heard about?
Murder.
Yeah.
Murder.
Yeah.
Yeah, just crimes up in general.
Right.
Violent crimes, murders.
Gun violence.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, obviously, people can have their opinions about law enforcement, but at the end of the day, they also have to realize that if law enforcement's not there, there's no one to stop what they've been dealing with.
Right.
Well, they have the social workers, though.
Yeah.
So that's something.
Yeah, that's working out. Let's see how that's working out. Let's take a journey, if you will, into the cities of defunding and see how this is working out. Well, first, let's talk about some cities that have defunded. Can you guys name some off the top of your head? What do you think?
Portland.
Why are you doing this, seductive mic talking today?
I don't
Minneapolis.
know.
Okay, Portland, Minneapolis. How about Chicago, New York, Los Angeles?
Have they actually defunded, though?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because that's right where we're going.
I don't think they've defunded. I think that they have reallocated some of their funds.
Well, they've done that too, and we're going to hit all of it, I promise. As always, Heather is 10 steps ahead of me with my low IQ. Anyway, so here's some cities that have taken these steps. In December of 2020, Minneapolis slashed $8 million from their budget, and they put it towards violence prevention programs, mental health teams, and other programs. So the grand scheme of things, $8 million is not huge for a city like Minneapolis, who I believe has well over $100-something million budget for their law enforcement. But nonetheless, they've taken that money away that we all know could be used for other things. In June of 2020, the same city council in Minneapolis indicated they supported disbanding the entire police department.
Wait, hold on. So within 6 months, they went from
Disbanding.
reallocating $8 million to getting rid of the police force entirely?
No, reversed. So in June of 2020, they wanted to get rid of their cops. In December of 2020, all they did was take away $8 million from the budget.
Okay, I'm catching up.
So
not 2021.
Right. So,
Okay.
and obviously in June, that was right after the George Floyd
Right,
incident.
right.
Tensions are high. Let's get rid of I think they wanted to go to like I forget what they called it, like a community-based, essentially they wanted like a neighborhood watch where like citizens helped
Like a Berkeley.
Okay.
stop crime.
Right.
Like a Berkeley College thing where you were just not going to be armed. And you were just going to be doing like
Yeah. Oh, they didn't even want
security.
police officers. They didn't want any of that.
Okay.
They wanted like a community thing where like they had like watch groups is kind of how I understand it.
Uh-huh.
With no training and, no professionalism and no budget, because we know that'll work out. Let's see what else here. Back to our favorite city of Portland. City commissioners voted in mid-June to cut nearly $16 million from the police budget in response to concerns about use of force and racial injustice. But that was contrary to what the protesters wanted, which was a 50% decrease. So I don't know how much of a percentage 16 million was. Obviously, Portland, a very large city. I think I looked it up last time after our first episode. They have like 800 cops or something. Obviously, they have a big budget, so who knows what the percentage is. I didn't get that. But again, protesters wanted 50% gone. And Portland's cuts were made. They saved money by eliminating gun reduction violence team, school resource officers, and a transit division. And they redirected all that to social service programs.
It's like the most important things.
Well, keep that in mind because we're going to get to that. So they got rid of their gun reduction violence team to save money. Okay. The New York City Council voted in July to move $1 billion with a B away from the New York City Police Department's budget and move the money to education and social services in 2021. Let's see, more cuts coming. Cuts came from, they canceled a 1,200 person recruiting class. So they canceled an academy of 1,200. If you've never seen
New York?
Yeah, if you've never seen a New York Police Department academy,
They're massive.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
They get like,
So they just cut that completely.
they ended an academy.
Oh, well,
You're
there you
done. 1,200 people, we don't need you.
Okay.
And that was going to be over the summer. They halved their overtime spending, so they cut all their overtime spending in half, and they redeployed officers from administrative functions back to patrol, and ended the police responsibility for school crossing guards and homeless outreach in the city. That's how.
So basically, if you're homeless, go to New York.
Well, yeah, and we're seeing that all over the country too.
Yeah.
L.A. I mean, if you guys have seen Venice Beach,
Oh yeah.
their entire
Oh, yeah.
boardwalk is nothing but homeless camps.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. It's everywhere. Obviously, that's a complicated issue. But New York saved $1 billion by canceling academy classes and doing all this stuff, right? Los Angeles, back to the West Coast here, they voted in July of 2020 to cut LAPD's budget by $150 million,
Dang.
reducing the number of officers to a level that has not been seen in over a decade in the city of LA.
Wow.
And a lot's changed in a decade. So not having as many cops as you had a decade ago, that's intense for me with
Right.
the crime that's spiking. About 2/3 of the funding for LAPD was earmarked, they said, for police overtime, and they instead used it to provide services and programs to the communities of color, including youth summer job programs. And with that, the city council voted 12-2 to drop the number of officers from 9,988 as of June 2020 to 9,757 by summer of 21. So obviously we're here in summer of 21, which would mean if they stuck to this program, that LAPD cut their officers by about 200, a little more than 200 for the city of LA.
That's a lot of people. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot of people just like talking about it, but when you're actually there on the street, like especially the citizens or just response times, 200's a lot of cops to cut and then expect the same services.
But is that patrol?
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like they're if it's not patrol, there's still adverse effects, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, think if it's detectives, that's cases that aren't going worked, or it's taking longer to work cases, taking longer to identify suspects, meaning that suspects are out in the street committing more crime until they're hooked, right?
If it's clerks, then it's just longer time for paperwork to
Could
get
be.
processed through the system.
It seems like a lot of what they're targeting is overtime, which obviously we all get that, right? Overtime's a big expense, and departments as a whole are always very careful about their overtime because that is where a lot of money is spent. But what does overtime do? It fills the gaps
Right.
when you don't have cops in your street. The other thing that's interesting to me is the recruiting aspect, where they're and from what I was reading with this, some of these they're like shutting down their recruiting units and making those people go back to patrol. They're canceling academy classes, as we talked about with New York. So compounding the issues that we talked about last time, or last show, about retention and resignations and retirements, they're up 48%, but yet we're cutting academy classes of 1,200 cops.
This is a problem that isn't going to show its full effects for several years.
Right.
Because people are going to stay for a while, but as people retire and there's less jobs to fill, and now you cut academy classes for 2 or 3 years, then you're going to start seeing the effects that this is having in the future. It's not going to be an immediate effect. Just this last week, I was actually volunteered for our academy scenarios, and I was surprised to see that their class had over 20 more people than when me and you went through the academy.
Oh, yeah.
They had over 84 students.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that seems like a lot. That's really good. So,
And that could be a cultural thing, too. It could be, I think it's a lot easier, despite it being California. I think there's a lot of other things here that make being in law enforcement worth it to an extent.
yes.
Pay, benefits, protections from frivolous lawsuits,
Right.
Weather.
sure. I mean, it's obviously night and day from working in Minneapolis
Absolutely.
or in Portland or whatever, right? Especially because overall, especially in Southern California, there is still a lot of support for cops by some stretch. And another thing I want to say about the budgets is you look at these numbers, and to the people listening who haven't worked in law enforcement, seeing that Minneapolis only took away $8 million, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. In reality, it's not. It's not a lot of money. But for those of us who work in law enforcement and we see, I know, Bookham, for years you've worked with grant money, right? $8 million is huge.
That'd be amazing.
When it comes to doing something, right?
Yeah.
So even though you're only cutting, in air quotes, only cutting $8 million, that $8 million could be the entire city's overtime budget for the entire year.
Right.
And then now you're not backfilling or whatever. So even though it's small in the grand scheme of how much money the departments are getting, and I think that's where these BLM protesters are not happy because they want like 50% cut. So the city's doing what they can do. They cut only so much, but it's still a negative effect and this is just on the citizens I'm talking about. Not even on the cop. We're not even talking about cops right now because I could care less what my department's budget is as long as I still have a job. Like you don't want to do proactive details. You don't want to pay overtime. Okay. That doesn't affect me. That affects the citizens in the streets.
Right.
So how do you think this is working out for those cities? We've had now a year since this has all started. Where do you think we're at?
Not good.
That statement brought to you by Deputy Bucco.
Yeah. Not good. Not good. Well, let's take a look here. So in Portland, from July of 2020, this is when the budget cuts were first made, to this past February, does somebody want to give me a percentage of where they think, how much percentage homicides have gone up in the city? Heather, you're our number guesser. What percentage do you think homicides have increased from July of 2020 to February in Portland?
Well,
Can we get a baseline?
Compared to the same time last year.
I think you showed me this one. I think that I saw the statistic for this one. Wasn't it like 153% or something like that?
270.6%.
Jeez.
And that's homicides.
Yeah.
That's not even just shootings.
But do we have a number of how many that is? So if they had 1 last year and they had 3, that would cause that high percentage.
I don't have that with me in front of me. But
I'm sure we could easily look that up.
yeah, I can look it up real quick, actually.
But still, it's still high. That's a high increase.
Yeah.
If you have
Yeah.
over double your murders that you had before,
Yeah.
that's never good.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, and it could be just that they had one. I mean, I highly doubt it for Portland, but I mean, you know, it could be just a small.
So in last month, there was an article here that says that in Portland there had been 37 homicides, more than 6 times the number recorded in the same period last year.
Okay, I take that back. It's a lot.
That's a lot.
So, I mean, in the grand scheme, like 37 homicides, not a huge deal if you're in Chicago, where they have like,
It's
I
still,
think I'm going to get to that,
couple hundred or something.
more than that.
it's still a huge deal. I mean, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, yes. So, and I think in the San Diego area, I think it's very similar. But San Diego County as a whole has 3.5 million people.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is the city of Portland.
Right. Not the entire.
Right. Not Multnomah County.
Correct.
City of Portland.
Yeah. That's a lot. That would be like saying that there was, like 37? We said 37, right?
37. And it says here, if nothing changes in Portland, the homicide rate will be an all-time record for homicides. It will beat the all-time record of homicides set at 70 in 1987. So per this info, it will be literally the deadliest year in Portland history. And that's a 270.6% increase since they've cut budgets to their police department. Earlier this month, the Portland mayor, Ted Wheeler, sought $2 million in one-time funding for police and other agencies and outreach programs to try to stem the rampant gun violence in the city. So within a year, we've gone from defunding to refunding. Why? Because people are getting they're getting shot.
It's not working.
It's not working. People are not safe in your city.
Right.
And as politicians, it's time that these politicians understand that their rhetoric and their treatment of law enforcement and the way that they're using law enforcement as a scapegoat to get votes ends. Because people are getting murdered in your cities every single day.
What I don't understand is how the citizens, I mean, I'm not saying that they don't see that, but how there are still some that fall victim to that rhetoric.
Right.
You know? Like, the facts are there. All you
They
have
put
to
the
do
blinders
is look.
on. They put the blinders on.
Right.
They don't see what's going on.
All they see are their politicians doing what they, they're taking what it is we want. We want the police defunded. This is great. They're not looking at what kind of adverse effects it's having.
Well, because this isn't being done with any common sense. This is being done for the sole goal of getting votes and staying in office.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well.
So now let's travel to the city of Los Angeles. 22% increase in homicides and a 59% increase in shootings. And LA, as we know from being in Southern California, has never really been like a
super safe
city.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always been full of gang violence and whatever, and that's just LA. It is what it is.
Right.
Shootings in New York City, up 42.7% in the first half of the year compared to 2020. Homicides in New York have risen 12.2% compared to the same period last year in 2020. 12.2. Not huge, but if you're within that 12.2, that sucks. Mm-hmm. So people are starting to feel this, right? The citizens are starting to feel this. From January 1st through June 21st, there were 41 homicides, an increase of 64% compared to the same period in 2020. And robberies were up 30%. Aggravated assaults were also up 10%. And this is in Minneapolis. So we brought it full circle back now. Minneapolis, right? Only cut $8 million. But they're seeing a 64% increase in homicides, 30% increase in robberies, and a 10% increase in aggravated assaults. Another interesting thing about Minneapolis is they have ShotSpotter. You guys know what ShotSpotter is, right?
No.
Okay, so ShotSpotter is a system that's installed within like street lights, traffic lights, whatever in the city.
Is it the sound thing?
Yes,
Yeah,
and
that's
it
cool.
picks up gunshots.
Yeah.
And it reports them directly to the PD so they can respond to the area to make sure nobody's been shot.
The fact that we actually need
Yeah, it's like a decibel rating. Like
Yeah.
it's,
in cities. Can you? That's funny.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So in Minneapolis, let's see here. So during that same period, January 1st to June 21st, they had 11,778 shot spotter activations.
Wait, say that one more time.
From January 1st to June 21st. So half the year. 11,778 shot spotter activations. That means that 11,778 times someone has shot a gun in the streets of Minneapolis.
Well, we don't know if that's a firework. It could be.
Right, it could be. And I don't know how shot spotter works. I imagine that it requires a certain decibel rating. I don't know. But I can tell you that that's a 73% increase over the same period the previous year.
Now, what about, since things are changing and technology is evolving, there's this new ghost guns that are floating around. People are making guns. They're 3D printing guns. And so people that couldn't get guns as easy before now have a much easier avenue to obtain firearms.
Sure.
So it's kind of like a double-edged sword because now you're cutting police funding.
Right.
And now there's technology that anyone can go out and buy to now manufacture a gun.
Not to mention you're cutting your gun violence programs, your teams that are out there to target gun violence,
Right.
to save money in your budget to appease your voters who now are getting shot in the ass.
Right. I mean, but eventually that's going to start getting to us. So if they're if they're
100%.
shooting other criminals or committing robberies, now they're going to start shooting more police and
Right.
having more
Which
shootings.
we've seen.
Right.
The numbers this year are already staggering, and that's not even considering COVID, right? But these cities, I mean, they're starting to see this. Now it's starting to be clear. People are starting to see these effects. The citizens themselves. We're going to go back to Minneapolis.
Are they getting woke?
They've been woke. That's the problem. They're going back to sleep now. So I don't want to. I don't want to see what's going on because my neighbor just got shot, and I can't go outside. My kids can't play in my front yard.
Yeah. How sad. How sad is that?
It is sad.
Yeah.
That you have to worry about being able to. I mean, weren't you just telling me that? I think it was in Chicago. Maybe it was a 1 month old
Yes.
that got shot and killed.
I don't know if she died yet, but she was shot in the head.
Oh, well. Yeah.
I want to say this. I don't have it directly in front of me. Actually, maybe I do. Hold on. I might have not written it down. Last weekend in Chicago, there was like 79 people shot.
Jeez.
In a weekend?
Yes.
One weekend.
From Friday, last weekend. So that would have been the last weekend of June?
And I'm sorry. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 79 people.
Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Sunday. From midnight Friday to 11:59 Sunday. So 3 full days.
79 people.
79 people shot.
In Chicago.
We
should definitely go vacation there.
I want to say that their number of shootings was it
Something ridiculous.
1,100.
Yeah. Just not everyone died.
Right.
Wow.
Now these all in a certain area.
I'm not sure.
That's a lot of people.
I know I saw a video the other day that it was a street in Chicago, and it was a I don't know, security camera or what it was, but there was multiple cars on the street, people hanging out. One of the cars opens up and 3 dudes jump out with AKs and literally just start shooting everyone on the street. And people are running and diving and taking off from their cars. And I think that was the shooting where the 1-month-old and the 8-year-old were shot. But in that shooting alone, there was 17 people shot.
Right.
Wow.
So I guess that kind of helps with the statistic, right?
That it's not.
We're not talking 79 individual shootings.
Correct. That the officers are responding to one scene where there just happens to be 17 people dead.
Right. But still, I mean, I remember years back listening to Chicago PD radio. Have you ever done that?
Oh, yeah.
It literally, they're pending home invasion shootings because they're on another shooting a couple blocks down. And they're like, sorry, they're going to have to wait. We can't get there. We have no units available. And this is before all this defunding or retiring, resignations.
Is Lightfoot still the?
Oh no. So yes, she is. So the other day, Lightfoot makes some speech talking about how crime is down. Because statistically,
She's not woke yet.
statistically,
Who's Lightfoot?
the mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot.
Oh, okay.
You know her. She looks like Beetlejuice.
I can imagine that.
Yeah. So she goes on this thing with reporters like, no, man, crime is down. Chicago PD, I think, has gotten to this date 5,300 guns off the street.
Question: does she still have security at her house?
I'm sure she does.
Oh, okay.
But to her, crime is down. It's down. It's down. No, it's not down. It might be less than it was at some point that you looked at, but it's certainly not down. And I imagine that the 79 people shot this weekend would disagree with you.
Now, is this not making news because it's not officer-involved shootings?
Sure. In the same period of time, I forget exactly, I looked at it the other day. There had been over 300 fatal shootings to date in Chicago.
We need to, maybe in the next episode, we need to see if we can get a Chicago cop that wants to talk to us.
Oh, yeah, that'd be
Like
good.
via the phone.
Just to see
Just
what...
because I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can only imagine how, like, we work here. I'm sure every place is different. But, like, I want to know more about, like...
What it's actually like
Yeah,
there.
is it a neighborhood? Is it a 12-block area? Like, what goes on? Like, how many cops work that area?
That's true. Because remember when we went to Ferguson and, you know, when all that stuff was happening, they made it seem like it was the entire town when actually it was just...
Like two streets.
2 or 3
Right,
streets.
right.
That, you know, the news were just blowing up. And everyone's like, oh, my gosh, don't go to Ferguson. Well, no. Ferguson in general, I mean, it is
Actually a nice
Ferguson.
town.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it was just that one little area. So it could very much be in Chicago that it's just one particular neighborhood that just has a lot of issues.
Well, and I'm sure that's the case. Looking up, I was looking up some statistics here. Looks like on Wednesday, 10 people were shot in Chicago. And so far to date, 1,587 people have been shot in the city. In half a year.
Wow.
1,587 people. Absolutely, utterly insane. And again, we're not talking, this is stuff that the citizens are dealing with, not even the cops. And I think looking at this, I remember the other day reading something. There had only been it was less than 10, I think, OISs with Chicago PD. In like a period of time that 1,500 other people had been shot. But yet, cops are the problem. That's the violence that's plaguing your community.
The cops are too busy to work.
Yeah.
That's
They
the
can't
problem.
get to everything.
Right.
But still, I mean, the fact that people like Lightfoot are out there saying law enforcement is the issue. We need to take money away from them because they're the problem and put that money towards community programs to increase safety. Well, it's not working because you've had, less than 10 OISs? Every single one of which has come with a protest, of course. What about the 1,500 other people that have been shot?
We don't care about that because that's...
It doesn't give you votes.
Nope.
No points.
Well, and I mean, sometimes.
Thank you.
not
Come
all
again.
Of it
Thanks for visiting Chicago.
Is black on black crime or white on white crime or white on black but not officer involved crime.
Sure, it doesn't get it. It doesn't get the juice. Doesn't get it flowing. Insane. So, with all that being said, I think these cities are finally starting to come around, and I can hope. So, we'll go to Minneapolis. Mayor Jacob Frey, who has been very outspoken against Minneapolis PD, but has towed the line, from my understanding. He was not giving in too much to what the 50% budget cut or the removing of the police department that they wanted, but he was also the guy out there marching with people and doing all the stuff, right? Obviously, political posturing. So, in May, Jacob Frey decides, holy shit, Minneapolis has gone to hell. I have no cops. I need state and federal law enforcement authorities to come help me keep Minneapolis safe because we have too much crime. He said, quote, safety in our city has to be a priority.
You're talking about this May.
Correct.
Okay.
So if safety in your city has to be a priority, at what point did removing funding for your cops think you were going to reach that goal? Things have gotten so bad in Minneapolis that the residents in minority neighborhoods are suing the city of Minneapolis because the city has failed to maintain minimum law enforcement staffing. And guess what? They won. A few days ago, a Minneapolis judge sided with them and ruled that the mayor and the city council had failed to keep adequate number of officers required by the municipal charter with the city, and issued an immediate order to the mayor and the city to hire more law enforcement.
But I'm going to be very interested to see where they're going to get people to actually put in to become officers there because of all of the mistreatment that they've had in that city.
Sure.
I would not ever, I could be jobless and that would not be the place that I would go to work.
Yes.
Yeah.
I could be living in a tent on Venice Beach Boulevard.
Yeah.
On the boardwalk.
No, there is no way.
You couldn't pay me to work in Minneapolis. Here's the thing. Yeah, how does that recruitment ad go? Have you ever wanted to work in a city that wishes you were dead every day? Have you ever wanted to show up to work and think, wow, what if I get defunded tomorrow and abolished? Minneapolis is the city for you. Now hiring.
But then I'm also kind of interested in those people, those citizens that had that filed the lawsuit. How many of them were actually part of that group saying that they wanted the police department defunded?
I can tell you that one of them, this is a nice little peek at how bad it's got. One of them, she had her let me back up. She had her house shot up in a drive-by twice. Can you imagine living in a neighborhood?
No.
That's awful.
Right.
Now, they're either going to have to change two things. One, there's going to be either some major signing bonuses to pick up new officers, or, which I hope they're not doing, they're going to have to lower their hiring standards.
Well, they can't because the people don't want them to spend the money. So, yeah, you can't offer signing bonuses.
Right.
Your budget's been reduced.
So they're just going to have to lower their standards.
Or just hope and pray they get qualified applicants for the job.
Yeah.
I don't see a way that that's possible. I don't know of one. Literally, I can't think of one person that would be like, oh yeah, I want to go be a cop in Minneapolis, unless that's the only place you can become a cop, which translates to even other issues,
Right.
which then continues the cycle of what we're seeing. So per Minneapolis's charter, they're required to have a minimum of 730 cops based upon their
Demographics.
Yeah, their population. So as of late May of 2021, there were 699 officers, with 67 of them on leave, like a long-term leave, right? Injury or IA or whatever. So if they have to have now we're talking minimums here. And we've all worked minimum staffing, and it sucks. Minimum staffing isn't what you need to get the job done. It's what you have to have at the minimum. It doesn't make it easy. It's not like, ooh, 730 cops, we are golden. We got enough people to handle whatever. That's the minimum. So in May, they were at 699 with 67 on leave. So they're down 100-ish. In early of January 2019, they had 910 with 35 on continuous leave. So if you rewind as a citizen of Minneapolis back to January of 2019, you had 900, well, with the people on leave, you had 880 cops. And now you have 699, and they're projected to be, by the end of the summer, down to like 630.
Is that just from retirements or people just leaving?
I think it's a combination of everything. And I know we covered the retirements and retention stuff last time, but I mean, people are leaving in droves because they might not have a job. Not to mention, they don't want to keep dealing with what they're dealing with. And we've had the pleasure of being around people from Minneapolis PD. We actually went to a fundraising gala in Minneapolis with Backing the Blue Line, which is a nonprofit in Minnesota. And Minneapolis it's a really cool city, actually. I thought it was.
Yeah.
There was a lot of cool stuff to do, a lot of beautiful sights to see, and churches and parks and rivers. And I would have never, when I was there, I'd never felt unsafe. But again, that was 2019.
When they had
enough law enforcement officers to keep their city safe.
right.
Right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
In New York City, Mayor de Blasio, now he's going to reinstate $92 million to build a new precinct after it was scrapped last summer. The mayor of Baltimore, who led efforts as a city councilman to cut the police budget by $22 million last year, just asked for a $27 million increase. I'm not a math guy, but it seems like maybe they're playing this like, we need to figure out our happy medium of.
Right.
Well, and it's just is so evident now then how political all of these moves were. And it's sad. It's sad to think that just because of politics and them, these people and, their nice big mansions with all their, legal whatever, are going to play with the citizens that they're supposed to be serving with their lives to remain in office, to remain employed, to remain in a good light, and play this role to the media of, oh, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do all of these things. I'm going to promise all of these things. And as soon as it backfires, they'll go back, under the rug. They'll start pushing money where it needs to go. They're not going to go out and put it, say it out loud. No. They're not going to go to the media and say, hey, I'm reinstating this because of all these issues. No, they're going to do it quietly because they don't want to have an unsafe city, because then they're not going to have people wanting to come and.
That's bad optics for them.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's just.
So they have to
sad.
balance this. Well, if I support the cops, I'm not going to get voted in. And if I have a city where people get murdered every day, I'm not going to get voted in. So they got to play this middle of the road.
You want an easy fix for all this? Hypothetically?
Shoot.
We get rid of all police, every small city, county.
Okay.
Stand by.
Okay.
Just follow me. And you have just the police. You have the United States Police.
Oh, God.
Now, you can work in your different areas that you are, but it's like the TSA. TSA is the TSA. Now,
We have so much
hold on.
faith in the TSA.
It's just an example as like an agency. Like
Sure.
there's TSA agents in San Diego. There's TSA agents in every state at every airport. But it's the TSA.
And they all operate
so
differently.
they all
give you different rules
okay.
every
That's
time
probably
you go to an
a
airport.
bad example.
No, I see
you,
what you're
you
saying.
get what I'm saying. Like they have the same policy procedures.
I get what you're saying.
And that way you get rid of all the government that's like in each city that's trying to fight for certain things and dealing with funding. It's just the police.
Sure. The problem with that obviously is like states' rights, cities' rights, what they want enforced, don't want enforced, different rules, laws. But I see where you're coming from, and you're woke, bro.
Right. Like every state's laws obviously apply, but like you would train for that state you're working in, but it's just the police. So it takes out all of those like other hands that are digging into the pot and trying to control things.
Yeah.
It would get rid of that.
Well, and this is obviously a tangent for another episode, but something I've thought about reform-wise is what if there was a national post commission? So cops would go through their state's academies, but those academies would have to conform to national standards for hours of training, right? Not topics of training per se, but hours of training. So you have to have so many hours of TTAC, so many hours of firearms, so many hours of child abuse, domestic violence, yada, yada, yada. The reasoning would be that every cop in the nation would have the same amount of hours, and it would, in essence, like you're saying, put them on the same pedestal of, if you go to the middle of Kentucky, you're not going to run into a cop that's never been in a DTAC class, or versus going to California where somebody had 24 hours of it.
Right.
Everyone would be on the same playing field. I don't know anything about Kentucky. That was just an example. But everyone would be on the same playing field, and I think that it would raise the quality of policing nationwide. And the way that you could get departments to do it would be, if you want federal funding for your grants or for whatever, you have to comply to our standards. And cops would hold both a state post commission and a national post commission certification.
Well, and that and the regional aspect, I think that's a huge thing too, because at least here in Southern California, we have the regional academy. So if I end up on a shooting in another city,
Right.
the cops that I'm working with in that city are going to operate the same way that I would be operating, or vice versa.
Sure. Yeah. And obviously that's a tangent that could be explored for hours, right? With different things to make that stuff better. But it all takes money. All of that takes money. You're not going to have a good police force or a safe city without investing in both. And it continues in cities all over. Oakland, for example, in April, they restored $3.5 million. So they cut $29 million from their budget last year. In April, they added $3.5 million. And the mayor is now proposing another increase of $24 million. So you're right back to what you cut. So it's like it was cut for the simple sake of political posturing, and now it's like, okay, we're done with that. You know, Chauvin's in prison now. We're going to go right back to where we were before because we don't really care about the issues that you guys say law enforcement has. We just wanted votes. Los Angeles' mayor, back to L.A., he's proposed an increase of $50 million after they cut $150 million because it's not working.
Right.
So that was all the perspective of the citizens, right? Now let's move to how is this affecting us as cops? What effects has this whole defunding movement had on departments across the nation from our perspective? What do we think?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
She's tuning me out, which is what wives do.
Yes.
What affects, everything we talked about was citizens, how this has affected citizens. How is this affecting cops? What negative or positive effects has this defunding movement had on departments from our perspective?
Well, I think it's like what Bryce has mentioned. I don't think we really feel it too much here.
Sure.
So it's probably going to be speculative of talking about other departments and how they're feeling it. I feel like we talk with enough cops that we have a general idea, but we would never know until we actually talk to these people.
Right.
Which I think having somebody from Chicago give that
Sure.
perspective would be huge.
Yeah.
But let's just take let's just common sense wise. These numbers and shooting increases or whatever, do you think it's all because after COVID crime's risen or because there's not enough cops? Or do you think that has something to do with morale? The cops aren't getting out there and being proactive like they used to be because they're not being encouraged to be proactive.
I think the encouragement is there. I think the hesitation is what's holding a lot of cops back.
That's a good point.
And we talked about this in the last episode too, where just they don't feel protected, they don't feel appreciated. So why am I going to go out there and risk my family and my house and my livelihood or my life to do something that I'm not going to be supported or backed on?
And do you think that this whole defunding thing has caused that mental process to go through cops' heads?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's even happened here.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even though I know that this probably isn't going to happen to us here, hopefully, it's still in the back of my head.
Well, and you also see people, and again, like Heather said, we've talked to cops all over the country.
Right.
We always talk to cops all over the country. We've traveled the country talking to these cops. So you see what they're going through. Like our entire conversation about not wanting to work in Minneapolis. There's still 699 people that work in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a huge mental game that they're playing. Morale in general. And then obviously add on bad police leadership, bad city management leadership, all the people that are in play with these budgets being cut. It's all coming together.
I think hopefully now we're seeing a trend of starting to request money or get money back. So hopefully in a year this will be a different story and things will start to go back to the way they were. I'm not being too optimistic, but hopefully they get more funding and people start wanting to be cops again. I mean, I think there's still a lot of people that do want to be cops, and obviously our academies are full. Right. I'm sure other cities within the country are having full academies, and so the desire is still there. I just think that we need to keep this going so that in the coming years we're not going to be back to where we were or even worse.
Well, and one thing, you said obviously there's still people wanting to be cops, and we touched on this again last week, was that's because it's inside, right? People feel a calling to do this job. The problem is when we allow politicians and city governments to make things so bad for our cops that calling is silenced because it's not worth the reward. The risk is not worth it for some of these people. Right. And I get messages about that all the time. I got a message from a guy the other day that asked me how it is that he could talk his wife into letting him become a cop because of everything going on. I mean, those are the people that want to suit up. Those are the people that want to go to your 911 call and help you. But they're being completely sidelined and completely derailed motivationally on everything that we're seeing.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and this is how I've seen it before. It's kind of like that, what is it, the pendulum?
Pendulum swinging.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You know, it's going to come back.
Sure.
It always does.
Yeah.
And it's a shitty time right now. It's not fun for anybody.
Right.
But I do believe that it is a trend and it will come back. I don't know if it'll necessarily come back to how it was, and one can hope that maybe it'll come back a little bit better.
And I think that obviously it depends on what goes on in the country. I think if we see another 9/11, that's going to have drastic implications. Yeah. Because it's going to get people to realize what it is that the men and women behind the badge do every day. Yeah. Final thoughts, Bookham. What do you got?
The police. I'm still on it.
The police. I like it.
No, I think this is.
Yes, that is what we've been talking about.
No, I mean like my massive agency police.
Sure.
Like, but
the U.S. police.
The U.S. police. No, I think this is definitely it's a very in-depth topic. I'm glad to see. I didn't know all the stats of things coming back. I watch the news or read whatever. I guess I should take my own advice and stop reading information on social media.
Right.
But when I saw it happening in the middle part of last year, just all the defunding, and I didn't know that a lot of these places were starting to backtrack and go, oh, we need more money. So this is good. This is what I've wanted to see, and I'm glad that process is starting. I guess my advice is for people that are working in those areas is hang in there. It sounds like things are going to start getting better, if not with your city councils, at least with the funding for the police department. Yeah. So that's great.
And you know what? I just want to say, God bless America. I just want some patrioticness in this world again. Yeah. This, everything lately against America. You know what? I feel very blessed to be here, and I feel like that's something that we need to bring back. I mean, not only in just especially with 4th of July coming tomorrow. I mean...
Well, this will air after 4th of July, so we hope you had a good 4th.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But we're recording it prior to the 4th. So, America? I just got a new flag for the front of the house. I went from a 3x5 to a 4x6 just to say I did. That's another foot of freedom in each direction, everybody, if you're paying attention. I'm Deputy Hookham. Thanks for listening to Priority Traffic.